What's up, Flannerers? We are back for Week 7, Steelers at Bengals. First game of the slate, Thursday Night Football. Could be a fun one, should be a fun one. We've got a couple old guys chucking the ball to a bunch of young guys. Bad defenses. I don't know. I think this one could be a fun start to Week 7, but it's pretty up in the air right now. What do you guys think? Is it going to be? We appreciate all of you showing up in chat early. Please do, if you haven't already done so, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're not already subscribed. Trying to get to 6,000 subscribers by the end of the NFL season. And of course, if you're not already signed up for Run the Sims, use promo code Neil when you do sign up. You'll get 10% off your first payment on any of their products. Going to be doing the same thing I always do here. Again, we're going position by position, starting with quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, defenses, kickers. In the end, I will rerun the Sims. I'll make some adjustments. I've already run the Sims here once just to see what we get with the first run. Now, I don't think we saw anything in the inactives that is going to change what we get here. I don't think Jermaine Burton was projected in or anything like that. So I think we're good. I think, like, for the most part, the Sims are where they are going to be. So I've already run them once. Again, we'll be running them again later on, making some adjustments to get to some other players that I like on this slate. Just reading through chat here. Slate may come down to whichever dusty wide receiver projected for 1.5 to 3.5 points does well tonight, with does well being a very loose term and relative. Yeah, agreed. Waylon Jennings. This one is going to be an interesting one. Kind of hard to predict what's going to happen. We'll do our best. We can make educated guesses on which of the dusty, low-owned, cheap guys have the best shot at scoring the touchdown, putting up some fantasy points. But man, it's gonna be a tough one because we have a lot of value that looks pretty good, honestly. Like it's a lot of value that's not just hoping for a touchdown on one target. We've got several players that could get 5 or 6 targets today, and it wouldn't be totally shocking coming in at low ownership. So going to be a fun slate to break down. Quarterbacks, as usual, not the most interesting position to break down because quarterbacks are almost always in play, fairly strong plays on these showdown states. You can see here what I'm getting in my first run. So you can see over here the projected ownership that we're using when running the Sims, and then on the far right, the shady flex exposure, shady captain exposure. Those are the exposures that I'm getting to in this first run in my so I'm playing 219 lineups tonight. I set that for the shady exposure. So in my top 219, my portfolio right now, these are my exposures both in the flex and at captain. So Aaron Rodgers projected for 48.6% flex ownership, 11.2% captain ownership. I'm a little bit underweight in the flex, a little bit overweight at captain. I think that makes a lot of sense. Aaron Rodgers is going to look good at captain because although he doesn't run the ball much, he has a great matchup with Cincinnati and should spread the ball around quite a bit. So generally, one of the things you need for a quarterback who doesn't run to be the optimal captain, they can't be targeting one player too much, because if they're targeting that one player too much, then although the quarterback's scoring a lot of points, that player is going to outscore them because the pass catcher scores a point per reception. They get more points for each yard, for a touchdown, et cetera, et cetera. So easy for pass catchers to outscore quarterbacks. So you need a quarterback if they're going to be the optimal captain who's going to be spreading the ball around quite a bit. Luckily, Aaron Rodgers has a lot of options that he will be spreading the ball around to. No quarterback in the lineup, even viable? Definitely viable to have some lineups with no quarterbacks in them. As you can see here, I'm getting to about 50% Joe Flacco, 50% Aaron Rodgers, and then I don't think it's going to be like all of my lineups have either Aaron Rodgers or Joe Flacco. I bet a quarter of my lineups right now probably don't have any quarterbacks in them. But yeah, Aaron Rodgers looks like a pretty relatively strong captain play. I'm getting to about 40% in the flex. I don't see anything here that I would want to change. I think it makes sense. I'm a little bit under the field overall on Aaron Rodgers. I do typically prefer getting to some of the pass catchers, but I'm happy to get to about 50% Aaron Rodgers. That looks good. It is, again, a very strong matchup. Looking at schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks, this is the 4th best matchup for quarterbacks on the season so far. In terms of pass rate over expectation, let me just pull up my sheet here instead of pulling it up. Steelers 22nd in pass rate over expectation. So they have been a run first team, but 22nd kind of middle of the pack as far as that goes. Okay. Joe Flacco, 9,400, a little bit cheaper, projected for 50% flex ownership, 5.5% captain ownership. I am like just slightly under the field on Joe Flacco, 47% flex, 5% captain. Seems fine. I think Joe Flacco is, again, just a totally fine play, not somebody that I'm like, I need to be well over the field, well into the field here. I think the field has it about right on Joe Flacco. As you can see here, fifth best matchup for quarterback. So both have top five matchups in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed. Better for quarterbacks on the ground here against Pittsburgh. So that doesn't really benefit Joe Flacco. He's not going to be running the ball. So, maybe it's not quite as good as this might indicate, because he's, it's plus 1.5 through the air. It's good. It's above average, but not like an elite matchup for Joe Flacco for his skill set. But ultimately, yeah, around 50%. I have no issue with that. I believe the Bengals were, and I can double check myself here, 10th in pass rate over expectation. Yeah, 10th in pass rate over expectation last week, which was Joe Flacco's first week as a starter. I think that's a better indicator than looking at like what they were doing when they had Joe Burrow, because obviously different quarterbacks, they're going to play the game a little bit differently. As far as stacking goes, I'm always stacking these quarterbacks. I think that includes Rodgers, even though he does spread the ball around quite a bit. I'd be surprised if I have many lineups that have Aaron Rodgers without any kind of stack. Maybe it's viable with Aaron Rodgers, but I think most will at least have one of the running backs with him. And if I have these quarterbacks at captain, I think I want to have multiple pass catchers in the flex. Again, they are statue quarterbacks. They're not running the ball much. So you're going to need them to spread the ball around to be the optimal captain, because they obviously, to be the optimal captain, you need them to score a lot of points. They're not doing it on the ground, so they have to do it through the air. They can't do too much of that damage with just one receiver. So typically, if I have a statuesque quarterback at captain, I'm going to want to have multiple pass catchers in the flex that qualifies for both of these quarterbacks. I think that's really all I have to say about the quarterbacks. We talked about, great matchups. Yeah, we can move on. Other positions are maybe more interesting to talk about. Yeah, we will get to wide receivers in a bit, but we'll get to running backs first. Starting with the Pittsburgh side, Jaylen Warren, 8,400, projected for 40% flex ownership, 13% captain ownership. I am above weight in the flex right now, 48.4%, 11% captain. So slightly below weight at captain on Jaylen Warren. I don't see anything with these numbers that I feel strongly I need to get away from. I think, I'm about with the field overall on Jaylen Warren. I think he's a pretty strong play with kind of a wide range of outcomes. We'll get into why in just a minute. Kenneth Gainwell, 6,400, projected for 27% flex ownership, 5% captain ownership. I'm getting to 39% at flex, 3% at captain. So again, a little bit overweight in the flex, a little bit underweight at captain on Kenneth Gainwell. These are numbers that I think, as I make adjustments, I wouldn't be surprised if I get to more of both of them at captain. I think Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell are both fairly strong captain plays, strong plays overall. And then we have Caleb Johnson's 2,400, projected for 8% flex, 0.5% captain. I'm just getting to 1% in the flex right now of Caleb Johnson. So if we look at, to contextualize the Steelers, Jaylen Warren was, the leader of the backfield in terms of expected fantasy points. I think he doubled up Kenneth Gainwell over the first 3 weeks of the season. Week 4, Jaylen Warren was hurt against the Vikings with a knee injury. Kenneth Gainwell came in, played really well, put up I want to say 30 PPR fantasy points, something ridiculous. So there, and then week 5 was their bye. So with Jaylen Warren returning in week 6, there was some question as to what's the workload going to look like. Is Jaylen Warren still going to be the bell cow? As you see here, Kenneth Gainwell actually led the Steelers in expected fantasy points in week 6. Jaylen Warren had more carries, 11 for Jaylen Warren to 6 apiece for Kenneth Gainwell and Caleb Johnson. Kenneth Gainwell actually ran more routes, 42% route participation, 6 targets in that game. Jaylen Warren, 35.5% route participation, 2 targets. So, I mean, it's kind of unclear who is, if there is actually a bell cow, like a leader of this backfield right now. I think it's still reasonable to assume that Jaylen Warren most games is going to lead in terms of expected fantasy points. Again, his route participation, not that much worse than Kenneth Gainwell, even though he only had 2 targets to Kenneth Gainwell 6, played 52% of the snaps versus Gainwell 34.5%, Caleb Johnson 19%. So I think it's pretty reasonable to, make the assumption that Jaylen Warren, at least the likeliest of the trio to take on like more like a bell cow workload where he could get 20 touches in the game. I'd be pretty surprised to see Kenneth Gainwell or, I mean, certainly Caleb Johnson get 20 touches in a game. I wouldn't be that surprised to see Jalen Warren take over more of the backfield and get 20 touches in a game. So ultimately, I think Jalen Warren at 8,400, even in a split backfield where there are three running backs working in, I think he's a fairly strong play in this matchup where, again, the Bengals against running backs, second best matchup. This is they've allowed the second most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to running backs, largely through the air, plus 4.7 in terms of fantasy points through the air to running backs, plus 3.1 on the ground. So honestly, great in both metrics there. Matchup for the running backs here. So at 8,400. If Jalen Warren does get a bell cow role, like he's just too cheap for this matchup. It is up in the air. So I think like given the volatility there, the range of outcomes, and like his likely workload, I think 8,400 is a fair price tag on Jalen Warren. And I like him quite a bit at captain. I think easier to fit in other strong plays in the flex with Jalen Warren than like if you play 12,000, Jamar Chase becomes 18,000 in the captain spot. That's hard to play him there and then fit in other great plays. So Jalen Warren, kind of the price is right where you can fit in a lot of strong plays with him at captain and just hope that he has success and maybe picks up more workload here. But then Kenneth Gainwell, I also think is actually a fairly strong play at captain. I'm getting under the field here. You can see he's projected for 5.4%. I'm at 2.7%. Again, he actually had the awesome week in week 4 and then retained a pretty strong workload here where, yeah, he only played 34.5% of the snaps, but he did lead the team, the backfield, at least in expected fantasy points. I think that the pie could just grow here as well. I didn't fact check Adam on this, but I think Adam said that Mason Rudolph also had a fair amount of work in the running game here, which I don't know that you can expect that every week that Mason Rudolph is going to get involved in the running game. So I think that the pie might just get bigger here. 23 total carries last week for Pittsburgh in this matchup with Cincinnati, who is just really bad against the run. Maybe Pittsburgh just leans into the run a little bit more, and there's 30 carries split amongst these three and 12 targets instead of 8. So I think that they are all strong individual plays, and then you can also play them together, particularly Gainwell and Warren. Caleb Johnson, kind of a big unknown. So he is a rookie, and sometimes you can hope for a post-buy rookie bump, which maybe we saw that with Caleb Johnson. Not really in terms of snap share, just 19% of snaps last week. He had 21. I guess sort of like considering Jalen Warren was back, he went from 3.7%, 3.4%, didn't play in week 3. I think he might have been inactive week 4. So this is with Jalen Warren out 20.8%. And then with Jalen Warren back, still retained 19%. So I guess you could kind of view that as a post-buy rookie bump, but also only 19% of snaps. I don't know. I don't have a great read on like, is he going to continue to be a factor? Is he going to grow his role now that we're past the bye? I mean, a lot of people think Caleb Johnson a pretty talented rookie. I don't think that he is a big priority for me. I think that it's primarily going to be Jalen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell, but at 2,400, I think he's a fine play. I probably want more than 1% of Caleb Johnson just in case it is real. And there is obviously contingent upside. Anything happens to either of the running backs in front of him, if there's a blowout, I think he's the guy who would probably benefit the most. So I actually think that he's like a decent play at 8%. I don't know that I want to match the field. I don't think I want to be overweight on 8% because we have a lot of strong value, but I do think having 4% or something of Caleb Johnson makes sense because I think that there are outs for him looking really good here, particularly in this matchup where it just doesn't take that much. Running backs have just been super efficient here, and we might just see even in a regular game script they just want to run the ball a ton, and maybe as the pie grows, Caleb Johnson gets more involved. But generally, I would say Jalen Warren, Kenneth Gainwell, priorities for me. I think their price tags are really nice for this matchup. They should have strong involvement. And then Caleb Johnson, kind of I'll mix him in. Maybe I want 3 or 4% in a 150 set. On the other side, is there anything else? Yeah, I mentioned the matchup. I think I mentioned everything there. On the other side, we have Cincinnati's running backs against Pittsburgh. Again, this is a top matchup for running backs against Pittsburgh. Mostly, I mean, it's a negative 0.4 on the ground, but plus 1.8. So better for pass catching running backs, but generally not that far above neutral regardless. Decent matchup for running backs against Pittsburgh so far this year. We've got Chase Brown, who Chase Brown now less expensive than Jalen Moore. Nobody expected this. He was a second round fantasy pick coming in. The workload was really strong in early weeks for Chase Brown. The workload has been shrinking for Chase Brown as Samaje Perine has taken on a bigger workload here. Actually, here I'm going to bring up the bell cow report for not just week 6. I'm going to bring it up for week 6 and 5, because those are the 2 weeks that we've really seen Samaje Perine a little bit more involved. So over the past 2 weeks, the Bengals 17 carries for Chase Brown to 10 for Samaje Perine, 10 targets for Chase Brown to 5 for Samaje Perine. As far as like snap rate and route participation, 53% snap rate for Chase Brown, 47% for Samaje Perine. So they're pretty even in terms of how many snaps they're playing. And then in terms of route participation, it's 40% for Perine to 44% for Chase Brown. So Brown has gotten more of the work, actually doubles up Perine in terms of expected fantasy points. So maybe it's just that Perine's playing more, but they're still using Brown more when he's out there. But wouldn't be that surprising if this is just kind of a fluky thing where Chase Brown happens to be in more on the plays where the running back is getting work. Maybe Perine can pick up, even out the actual expected fantasy points a little bit more going forward. Not that it's that great anyway. I mean, 11.5 expected fantasy points per game for Chase Brown, just 5.5 for Samaje Perine over the past couple of weeks. But it is intriguing, particularly with Perine's price tag. He's just 4,400. Chase Brown at 8,000. I mean, I guess that's reasonable if you think that Chase Brown can get back to the workload that he had early in the year. Maybe that $8,000 price tag becomes appealing. Projected for 34% flex ownership, 8% captain ownership. I'm sort of surprised to see how much I'm getting to of Chase Brown, frankly. 42% flex, 16% captain. I don't think that I want that much. I guess if you project it as though he gets closer to the workload he had earlier in the year, he will look really good here. He probably has some spike weeks in him still. The matchup is good enough. So I don't like, I think he's a fine play, but I don't think he's a stand that I want to be taking, that I want to be well over the field. So, I don't think I need to cut back on this, but I think if I see other spots when we look at receivers, tight ends that I like better, I wouldn't mind sacrificing some of this Chase Brown exposure because he's not my favorite play on the slate by any stretch. Samaje Perine, okay, so this is interesting, getting to a lot less than Adam and I were getting when we ran the Sims earlier. So clearly they changed something in the projection. I think giving more work to Chase Brown. They have Samaje Perine now project for 16% flex ownership, 2% captain ownership. Now we're well under the field. I'm getting to 7% Samaje Perine in the flex. And then Taj Brooks is 200. I'm not getting to any right now. I think I want more than this of Samaje Perine. Again, just we have back-to-back weeks of better involvement for Samaje Perine. If we look at the snap share over time, it's been steadily growing for Perine, 27%, 29%, down to 25%, but then back up in week 4 to 30%, 46.6, 46.8. So just they're playing Samaje Perine more and more. They seem to trust him more maybe than they trust Chase Brown. So I think Perine looks pretty good at 4,400 for a guy who maybe is splitting carries, maybe gets split opportunity here. Again, the past couple weeks, Brown has gotten the better workload, but I think Perine is pretty trusted here. Wouldn't be surprising if he gets more work going forward, or at least retains the kind of work that he's had the past couple weeks. So I think he's a decent play at 4,400. I am glad that I'm not getting to 45% anymore. I think, but I do think I want more than 7%. I think he is a player with high upside for 4,400, and could be pretty involved in the passing game here. So Perine looks pretty good. Ultimately, so looking at these exposures, I think I want less than what I'm getting right now, the 58% of Chase Brown. I don't feel that great about Chase Brown. I think, where the field is at, 42 2% seems okay. I don't even know that I need to be above that number. That seems fine. Samaje Perine, I think I want more than 7%. And then Taj Brooks, I think, is a player that you might want to mix in a set of 150 lineups. Has not been involved at all. I don't believe he has played a snap in the past couple weeks. Yeah, he only played in week 3, hasn't played at all the past couple weeks, but he is active. Um, his outs are injuries and blowout. I think I don't think Taj Brooks is suddenly going to get in there in a neutral game script. I think his outs to get in there again are an injury to either of Samaje Perine or Chase Brown, or just the game gets out of hand and they decide to start giving Taj Brooks the ball, which, not super appealing, except for the fact that he is only 200. So it actually doesn't take that much to pay off the price tag. We have a lot of value, but we don't have a lot of $200 value on this slate. So I think Brooks is viable, somebody to maybe mix in a 150 set. He's not going to be my biggest priority. If I have time to get up to 1 or 2%, maybe I'll make it happen. But I'm not going to err on the side of getting a lot of Taj Brooks. He's more of a, I'd like to get a couple shares, I think, but not a priority by any stretch. All right, I'm going to check in on chat and we'll move on to wide receivers. All right. Sean, no, this is the Fantasy Points data suite is not free. You can use promo code Neil to get promo code Flannel will get you 15% off on any of their packages at Fantasy Points. But yeah, you can get there are some free things at Fantasy Points. So if you want to go check out fantasypoints.com, things like schedule adjusted fantasy points. I believe this is free right now. So if you go to fantasypoints.com, go to research, you can find some free things here, but like the Fantasy Points data suite, you have to pay for that. If you want to check it out, you can use promo code Flannel to get 15% off. All right, let me see if I have any other questions before I move on and talk about wide receivers. Worried about wide receivers at captain with no quarterbacks? I don't think I am. I think I'm going to get some of that. I think like a fair amount probably. All right. I don't want to scroll up too far because I want to make sure that I'm staying on task here. But Devin says a lot of people like Gainwell today. I mean, he's had a pretty strong role. Hard not to kind of like him at 6,400. Here was Devin said, I'm jumping ahead, but thinking about this slate as a whole, just fade Jamar and or DK, and you're going to be extremely unique. Not sure how viable that is, though. I mean, I think it's viable to fade either one of them. I guess we'll get into how owned both of them are going to be. I'm not sure if that alone will make you unique, but we'll take a look at the ownership here, and I'll see if I agree with that. Had my biggest DFS hit with Higgins, who knows, not that unrealistic. Yeah, Higgins strong. We'll get into it. Yeah, you can absolutely play both running backs together. I think Gainwell and Warren together, definitely viable, and will be kind of unique. I think you can even play one of them in the captain spot and play them together. Let's see. 8 targets last game for T. Higgins. Aaron, I am a gopher. Went to law school at the University of Minnesota, but honestly not a huge college football fan. I just don't really watch it. Went to undergrad at Tufts University, a Division III football school. I went to one game in my 4 years there. So, all right. Rogers loves to throw them screens. All right. Seeing if we have any other questions. Okay. Apologies if I'm missing questions here, but I'm going to move on. Talking about some wide receivers. We'll start on the Steelers side of the ball. They have Calvin Austin is out for the Steelers. He was out in the last game, so we can kind of see what they did in that game to get an idea of what they might do again here. But DK Metcalf has looked pretty strong. His workload seems to be increasing a little bit week over week. 10,400, big price tag on DK Metcalf. Again, it is a fairly strong matchup here for wide receivers against the Bengals. about the 10th best in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed. For DK Metcalf specifically, in terms of like the schematic matchup, it is a slight positive for DK Metcalf. Has the best of Jonnu, and I guess Calvin Austin, doesn't really matter. So strong schematic matchup, strong overall matchup in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed. Everything looks pretty good for DK Metcalf. I am getting slightly under the field here, 24% flex, 11% captain exposure. I want to make sure I have at least double digit DK Metcalf captain exposure. So that is one that I don't want to sacrifice that, as I am sacrificing elsewhere, because there are other plays that I really like here. But I do think that I want to make sure I've got at least double digit DK Metcalf captain ownership, because I think he's a really strong play on this slate. 35% overall seems fine. Like I'm a little bit under the field here. I think I'd be fine being slightly under the field. He is a player that I like, I want here, but also they just don't throw the ball all that much. So if we look at his stats on the season, just 31 targets in 5 games. So even as like he's leading the team by a fair amount, but that's still just over 6 targets per game for DK Metcalf. Now it's a great matchup. So I think if I'm going to play him anywhere, like this is the spot to play DK Metcalf. So I do like him. It's just when he's facing Jamar Chase and T Higgins, he is not as easy to prioritize, especially with the other running backs there. So ultimately, I'm like, yeah, I want to make sure I have double digits at captain. If I have double digits at captain and 35% total DK Metcalf, I think I'm okay with that. Like that would be slightly under the field, but not like a massive dock. Like obviously, I'd love to play all the DK Metcalf. I think he's a strong play. But you have to make sacrifices somewhere. If I have to sacrifice some DK in the flex, I think I'm okay sacrificing it. Now, it is worth noting that in that last game with no Calvin Austin, he did have a better role, and maybe this is things to come. Maybe he continues to have a better role. 9 targets in that game on 87.1% route participation. Still, only 95 yards in that game. Again, he could easily get 150 and 2 touchdowns here against the Bengals. So I want to make sure that I'm covering my bases with DK at captain, but with all the strong plays on this slate and the high price tag, he is not like the biggest priority for me currently. Just somebody I want to make sure I have decent exposure to, and double digit at captain. Beyond DK, currently getting to so Scotty Miller projected for 7.5% flex and 0.5% captain ownership. I'm getting to 18% in the flex, none at captain. That's great. I think I want to be probably over the field on Scotty Miller. Roman Wilson projected for 2.3% flex, 0.1% captain. I'm only getting to 1% right now. I think I want a little bit more of Roman Wilson than 1%. And then Ben Skowronek is 200 projected for 1% flex. I'm getting double that, 3%, 1.3%. I'm getting 2.7% flex Ben Skowronek. I think I want to make sure that I have at least like 4 to 5% of each of these Steelers receivers. I don't feel that strongly about who of them is the best play. If we look at what the team did last week, which I don't know that this is necessarily indicative of what we could expect going forward, but at least last week, in terms of route participation, Scotty Miller ran 48.4% of routes. He didn't see a target in that game. Roman Wilson ran 25.8% of routes. He had 1 target. Ben Skowronek, 12.9%, 0 targets. I guess, I say that I want to have at least 4 or 5%. I mean, Ben Skowronek, 13% route participation in that game without Calvin Austin. So it was already the kind of setting that we have here. I guess the bull case for all 3 of them is, depending on what kind of defense the Bengals are playing, they could just play more. Like we are already 48% Scotty Miller route participation last week. Wouldn't be surprising to see him up at 65% this week. I think there's going to be a lot of fluctuation based on the types of defense the Bengals are playing, based on how they are looking out there. I think that there is volatility in the playing time with Calvin Austin out on the Steelers. So I don't think we can just count on like, yeah, it's going to be Scotty Miller 48%, Roman Wilson 26%, Ben Skowronek 13. I think there's any one of them could be, double their current route participation. I think Ben Skowronek could be triple, quadruple, is, and none of it should be a big surprise to us. I don't think it's that easy to project what they're going to do week over week. Let's take a look at their route share week over week. Yeah, so Roman Wilson, I mean, he 38.5% in week 2. That's with DK and Calvin Austin both active. 0% in week 4, but then back up to 26%. So if you can run 38.5% with both DK and Calvin Austin active, you have to imagine there's upside for him to run more here. Scotty Miller, I mean, that 48.4%, that came kind of, I mean, not out of nowhere because it was the first game without Calvin Austin, but that was his highest by far of the season. And then Ben Skowronek peaked at 32% in week 4. Could easily get back there. Shouldn't surprise anybody if it does. I will read the coach speak on tight ends in a bit that maybe indicates that none of them is, we shouldn't necessarily expect a bigger workload for any of the three, but I just want to note that I think there's volatility in the amount that any of the three of them is running routes and the number of targets they might get in the game. So just because I think there's more volatility here than there usually is for like wide receivers 2 through 4. I guess is what I'm saying. Like usually it's like you're pretty set with, you've got your wide receiver 1 is running 90%, wide receiver 2 is running 85%, then you get the slot receivers running 60 to 70%, whatever. It's usually like, okay, and then the fourth stringer will get, this 13%. Usually that's like more set in stone. Here, I think it's a little bit more up in the air because we've got Kelvin Austin out. They involve the tight ends quite a bit, but sounds like based on Tomlin's quotes that like they involve Darnell Washington a lot more based on what the defense is doing. So I think that there is a lot of volatility in the inputs and what we can expect for these three receivers. But ultimately, it sounds like something similar to what we saw last week. Like I think it's reasonable to like make the assumption that is the most likely scenario, or of many different scenarios has the highest likelihood. But because none of them are projected for like any kind of ownership, because nobody really knows what to do with them based on what happened last week, what could happen this week. So they're all kind of going under the radar a little bit. And I think like the ownership kind of reflects the likelihood that they're going to run enough routes and see enough targets to be relevant. So, but I think ultimately I'd like to be above weight on each of them if they really are at 7.5%, 2.3%, 1.3%. Just I want to take a little bit more than that, where maybe I'm getting to 4% Skowronek and 8% Roman Wilson and 15% Scotty Miller. Something like, I think they all look like pretty strong contrarian plays here. On the other side, we'll get to the Bengals. I want to see if you guys have any questions or thoughts. Oh, who is the top Niels nobody? Unfortunately, I think all of the nobodies in this game are getting some ownership. I guess Scotty Miller at 8.5% would probably be the top Niels nobody. Yeah, I think that he has to be. Yeah, Aaron Smith says Pitt number 2 receiver seems to be Gainwell. I mean, yeah, that could continue as well. Yeah, but it's like I don't think we have any like nobodies that like are that like literally nobody's playing, and I absolutely love them. We have those from time to time. I don't think that we have any like true nobodies in this game that are getting no ownership, but look to me like they should be. But yeah, I think Scotty Miller probably is the top of that list. All right, and then on the other side we have Jamar Chase, projected for, he's 12,000, projected for 40% flex ownership, 18% captain ownership. I'm currently getting to 31.5% flex ownership, 38.8% captain ownership. I think I'm going to lose some of that captain exposure to Jamar Chase because I see others that I want to get more exposure to. This is the easy place to cut down. I can play 20% Jamar Chase at captain, still feel like I have plenty. And I want to take more shots elsewhere, I guess is what it comes down to. So I don't mind that I'm getting to 70% total exposure to Jamar Chase right now. That is well over the field right now, but I think I would like to move more of that Jamar Chase exposure to flex, because I think we have some other pretty strong pay up options here. So I don't think I need to take a 39% approach to Jamar Chase. Again, looking at the matchup here, it is the 4th best matchup for receivers against Pittsburgh in terms of the coverage grades. Jamar Chase, a slightly positive coverage grade here, plus 6.6 in the way Pittsburgh plays defense. In terms of expected fantasy points per route, I mean, 0.59 is obviously elite. He's just, he gets an awesome workload. I mean, we look at Jamar Chase's workload on the season so far. 55 targets in 6 games. So, just under like 9 targets per game for Jamar Chase, just over 9 targets per game. 91.6% route participation, elite workload for Chase. If we look at just last game, which was the only game with Joe Flacco, Chase saw 12 targets on 91.3% route participation. So Flacco just targeting his studs, throwing the ball a lot. Chase looks great. I don't think I need to talk anybody into Jamar Chase. I think he's a strong captain play. I just don't know that I need 39% because there are other places that I would like to go, such as T. Higgins. I think is somebody that I'm going to make sure I'm overweight on. Currently, he's projected for 21% flex ownership, 5.5% captain ownership. I'm getting 12.3% flex, 0.5% captain. Adam and I talked a little bit after our stream earlier, and he was kind of playing around with just giving like a little bit more workload to T. Higgins, just like increasing his target share slightly. And just by doing that and taking a little bit away from Jamar Chase, he was getting to a ton of T. Higgins. So just like a slight adjustment, and kind of where you put those numbers, it kind of depends on how long of a term you look at. Like, you're just looking at this season so far, where T. Higgins hasn't had a great role. He has not had any really big games so far. The target share is down. Everything is like kind of down this year relative to last year. So if you just put in, inputs based on, if you overweight in your inputs based on what has happened so far this year, T. Higgins, I think, doesn't look like that great of a play at 10,000. Like, he looks clearly too expensive at 10,000. But if you include last year in your sample, or weight more of last year T. Higgins sample size, which I think is reasonable, because I think T. Higgins is a really good receiver. So I think I'm going to take the approach of, instead of putting more weight on the more recent sample for T. Higgins, I'm going to take the approach of weighting more what he did last year. And I'm kind of making the assumption that at some point T. Higgins is going to break out. Maybe now with Joe Flacco, where again, we just saw in his first game with Joe Flacco, T. Higgins had, I guess, 7 targets is what it says here. I think elsewhere I had it at 8. But regardless, 7 targets in his first game with Joe Flacco, 80.4% route participation, and it's an elite matchup schematically for T. Higgins. In terms of the coverage grade, Pittsburgh plays a lot of man coverage. T. Higgins does really well against man coverage. Even so, nobody's surprised if it's Jamar Chase just getting the touchdowns, scoring all the fantasy points. Like, nobody should be surprised by that. But because T. Higgins is a lot more contrarian than Jamar Chase is, again, just 21% flex, 5.5% captain. And elsewhere, I think other places have even lower captain ownership for T. Higgins. I'm going to lean into it. I'm going to increase the rates for T. Higgins, make the assumption that maybe in this matchup, the squeaky wheel finally gets his. I don't know that the squeaky wheel narrative really applies, because after T. Higgins was kind of vocal about wanting to get the ball more, they traded for a new quarterback who then targeted him 7 times. So I don't know if he is, satisfied with the new situation. Regardless, though, I just think this is a strong matchup, and he's just a strong receiver who hasn't gotten there yet. He'll get there at some point. So I'm going to bet on it being this game. I'd like to be overweight on T. Higgins, particularly at captain. I think he's a really strong play. Then you've got Andre Yoshivas, 2,800, projected for 14.6% flex ownership, 1.2% captain ownership. I'm getting to 7% in the flex, 0.5% captain. It was also a really strong coverage grade matchup for Andre Yoshivas. I guess that is worth noting. The workload, in his first game with Joe Flacco, Yoshivas was actually targeted 4 times on 84.8% route participation. Not bad for a wide receiver 3. So I think he's a fine play. I don't think that I prioritize Yoshivas over like the Pittsburgh tight ends. Some of the Pittsburgh receivers are going to be more contrarian. So he has a slightly better role than the tertiary Pittsburgh receivers. But also the ownership kind of reflects it. So I think he's a fine play. If I got to 15% Yoshivas, I'd be fine with that. But also currently getting to 8%, I'm also kind of okay with that. He's not a huge priority for me. Just somebody I want to make sure I have some exposure, because Yoshivas can just score touchdowns. He's 2,800. If he catches 3 balls and scores a touchdown, you probably want him. And again, it's a strong schematic matchup, just not like a big priority here. Mitchell Tinsley, I'm not currently getting any. He's projected for 0.5% flex ownership. Let's see, has he been running routes? Yeah, 9% route participation in the last game, 2.2% the week before. You're just kind of hoping for a touchdown with Mitchell Tinsley. Certainly not a priority, but playable. All right. Tight ends. Going to check in on chat. Saul says 20% flex, 5% captain. I mean, that's right with the field, which, I mean, that's fine. I think that's a reasonable stance. If Higgins gets targeted 8 times against man, I'm all in on that. Yeah, exactly. That's what we're hoping for. And he could get targeted more. Will he be shadowed? I don't think anybody is projected for shadow, but that is a good question. I can pull up the wide receiver cornerback matchup report. Nobody projected to be shadowed. Yeah, I guess Jamar Chase has Joey Porter on him. T. Higgins has Darius Slay on him. Andre Yoshivas has Jalen Ramsey on him. Surprisingly, not the toughest matchup with the names on Pittsburgh, but so far it has not been a super difficult matchup for receivers against Pittsburgh. And then on the other side, also not projected for any kind of shadow coverage. Cam Taylor-Britt, by the way, is a healthy inactive, which obviously I don't love that when a player is a healthy inactive on a really bad defense, because chances are they're just going to bring in somebody who's better. So it might become a tougher matchup for the Pittsburgh receivers. But I mean, remains to be seen. They're bringing in obviously somebody who has not been playing, so it could be a better matchup. All right, tight ends. Let me start by reading off the coach speak on the Pittsburgh tight ends, because I think that it is telling. So give me 1 second here to find it. Take a drink of my water. Okay. Just starting on October 7th, Mike Tomlin said, on playing heavy personnel groupings against the Vikings, he said, we have a certain personality on offense when we play against 4-3 defenses. That's why we drafted Darnell Washington. You can't play 4-3 teams with 250-pound tight ends. There are weight classes in combat sports for a reason. When the edge people are 300 pounds, you better have somebody out there that looks like an animal. As we move into divisional play in the next couple of weeks, and we're playing against 2-4-3 defense teams, chances are you're going to see more of what we did against the Vikings. It's unfair at times to ask guys like Pat Freiermuth and Connor Hayward to block 4-3 defensive ends. That's not realistic if you want to have a good run game that day. On the 12th, he said, in the post-game presser, Mike Tomlin said, we've been very transparent about Darnell Washington's role. When we play against 4-3 defenses, we need a guy that looks like those 4-3 defensive ends. It's a major component of our run game. Can't say enough about his efforts. On the 13th, he said, Pat Freiermuth is certainly capable. He knows his time is going to come to ante up and kick in. He better be ready. I'm sure he will be. Coach speaking next, Greg says, Tomlin labeled Darnell Washington as a big tight end. They play against 4-3 defenses. Jonnu Smith as an oversized yak tight end, and Freiermuth as a zone killer. And then he added, Darnell Washington will certainly probably be in a similar position this week in terms of role, since we're playing another 4-3 defense. So he's suggesting that probably the role is going to be the same in this matchup, because they're kind of facing a similar defense here. Yeah, I think you can play Washington and Freiermuth together. I think it'll be kind of unique to play multiple of these Pittsburgh tight ends against each other. I do think that it is like probably slightly negatively correlated, but not enough. But I think it's probably going to be played too little because of the slight negative correlation. So what we've seen. So again, Darnell Washington. I'll just show you what has happened the past few weeks, what he's talking about. So this is in terms of route participation. Darnell Washington up from 20.6%, 15.4%, 12.5%, 2 weeks, 60% and 61.3% route participation for Darnell Washington. The snaps also look really strong for Darnell Washington, up to 90.6% of snaps in week 4, 79.3% in week 6. So really strong role for Darnell Washington. At the same time that Darnell Washington has been running more routes, Pat Fryermuth has seen a little bit of a dip, still like pretty involved, but 32% route participation in week 4, 45.2% in week 6. They had the bye in week 5. Jonnu Smith was at up to 70.8% route participation week 3, down to 40% week 4, back up to 71% week 6. It sounded like, Fryermuth was the one who Tomlin was most concerned about against these 4-3 defenses, along with Connor Hayward, who just kind of hasn't had much of a role anyway. But Darnell Washington, the big takeaway here for me is Darnell Washington could be in for another big workload. I mean, we've seen pretty strong workload the past few weeks for Darnell Washington. Looking at his total numbers across those 2 games, 8 targets on 60.7% route participation, always an end zone target. I mean, he's a big dude, has always been kind of an end zone threat tight end. So love the workload for Darnell Washington, and he's just 2,000. So he stands out as a really strong value, but also projected for 29% flex ownership, 2% captain ownership. So the field is aware of Darnell Washington's increase in workload. As a result, I'm getting just 16%. I wouldn't mind getting to a bit more Darnell Washington. But as you see here, when you project these like value plays who aren't going to have huge volume, they're going to like have better than expected volume for their salary. Then you project the field to play a lot of them, you end up getting very little, which was the case the other day with I forget who it was, the Washington Chris Moore, who did really well. It was because we were projecting him for 40% ownership, and when I had him project for 40% ownership, I was getting like 3%. I lowered that number and ended up with like 13%, but makes a big difference how you project the ownership. So Darnell Washington, if you project him as we are here for over 30% ownership, I only get 16%, which I'm not that mad about that. I do think this ownership is probably about right. Jonnu Smith, 4,000 project for 29.5% flex, 3.5% captain. I'm getting 25.6% flex, 0.5% captain. Pat Fryermuth is 3,000 projecting for 7% total ownership with 0.6% of it at captain. I'm getting 10% at all at the flex. So slightly over the field on Pat Fryermuth. It's such a great spot. Like tight ends against Cincinnati. Again, like you don't want to like carry over year, but it does seem like this has been an amazing spot for like a decade at this point. It is still a great spot. Tight ends against Cincinnati is still a thing, third best in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed. It's weird. It's tough because it's such a split. You don't just have like this is the tight end that you want to play a lot of. You have 3 tight ends who all kind of look good at their salaries, at their ownership. To me, I definitely want exposure to all 3 of them. I do think Darnell Washington is kind of the biggest priority, just based on the coach speak suggesting that they're probably, again, he didn't guarantee it. He said, we're probably going to see the same thing against a similar defense. It does sound like that is kind of negotiable based on like, hey, if they run a different defense, there's no guarantee that Darnell Washington is going to play the same. As he said, he's being pretty transparent about it. So there is a world in which Darnell Washington loses that role and we see others benefit, which could be the other tight ends, could be other receivers. There are ways that it doesn't go as expected. And I think it kind of comes down to how Cincinnati plays defense. Drop and Dime says Darnell Washington will be the most overowned player on the slate in large field GPPs. I mean, yeah, he's projecting to be pretty highly owned. Who would be your favorite? Who would be your preferred flex plays in higher dollar, smaller field tournaments? Captain pool will be small. I mean, Darnell Washington would be one of those flex plays in a smaller field, higher dollar tournament. Like he would definitely make the list. I think Kenneth Gainwell, Jalen Warren would both make the list of very strong plays. I mean, obviously Higgins and Chase. Trying to think of who else's value. But I think actually Jonnu would be on that list also. Maybe that's enough. All right. So yeah, I think all the Pittsburgh tight ends look pretty strong here. I don't think you really need to get down to Connor Hayward just because, of course, he'll score the touchdown on the day that we don't play him when we're playing 3 tight ends quite a bit. But he just not running a ton of routes. 3.2% last week. He was at 16% in week 4, I guess. But just you kind of need the touchdown for Connor Hayward to pay off, and it still might not be enough. On the Cincinnati side, We have Mike Gesicki out, so Noah Fant out, and also Tanner Hudson out. So with Gesicki and Tanner Hudson out, we can expect a bigger role for Noah Fant, Drew Sample, and Cam Grandy. Actually, Drew Sample is another one that I like a bit here. I think he could be in play for me, even in a smaller field contest, higher dollar. Still a low floor to be clear, but at 200, at 600 looks pretty good. Noah Fant, 3,600 projected for 23% flex ownership, 2% captain ownership. I'm getting 18% Noah Fant. Again, the workload. Moving over to the Bengals side, even with, I mean, Gesicki got hurt really early on in week 6. Noah Fant still only ran 41.3% of the routes. But that was with Tanner Hudson running 33% also. So I don't think that there's like a hard cap on Noah Fant. We haven't seen him run over 50% of routes so far this year. I don't think that that's something that like he can't. I think I expect him to run more than 50% of the routes here. So I think that he is a pretty strong play. And again, this is the best in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed. Pittsburgh has allowed the most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to tight end. So really strong matchup here for Noah Fant. I think he will run more than 50% of routes here. I don't think that this is a situation where he's got a hard cap, but he only ran 41% last week. I don't know that I expect him to run 70 or 80% either. I think it's probably like he probably runs 50 to 65% would be like my guess. If I had to guess like a 15% range, that's probably where I'd put it, but that's just an educated guess. Nobody really knows what to expect from Noah Fant with Mike Gesicki out. And then again, Tanner Hudson leaving some workload there. I think Drew Sample looks like a pretty strong backup tight end option with again Gesicki out and then Hudson out. I think Drew Sample also could get up to. I mean, he ran 35.5% of the routes in week 3 with Hudson out and Gesicki still there. Wouldn't be surprised to see Drew Sample end up running 40-50% of the routes, and he's only 600 in an elite matchup here. So I really like Drew Sample. He's somebody that I want to prioritize a little bit here at 4% projected ownership. I think he's a really strong large field GPP play. I also think that he is viable in smaller field, high dollar stuff. Because again, I think you might just have a pretty decent workload here, better than like a typical backup tight end situation, in my opinion. But I'm kind of just speculating. We don't know for sure what it's going to look like. And then Cam Grandy is just 200. You can play him as the backup tight end bet. 9.7% of routes in week 3 has been his season high. Not a priority for me. All right. Defenses and kickers. So we'll start with defenses. I will move down the sidebar, check in on chat. Aaron says a 15 to 12 field goal battle is in the cards. Please no. Please God no. I don't have to wait until Sunday to watch touchdowns. But it's definitely in the cards. All right. Aaron Smith says fantastic will surely be overexposed on Fanta. I haven't been tracking. Is he playing a lot of the top tight ends? Pittsburgh Steelers projected for 19% flex ownership, 4.5% captain ownership. I'm getting to 26% in the flex, 1% at captain of the Steelers. I mean, this is just a Joe Flacco behind that Bengals offensive line. They should be able to get a lot of pressure on Flacco, possibly cause some turnovers or just get some sacks. I think the Steelers look great here. I'm getting to a little bit over the field overall, lesser at captain than the field is getting currently, but I'm totally fine with the exposure I'm getting. On the Bengals side, 14% flex, 1.4% captain is the projection I'm getting to, 17.4, 0.5 at captain. They're 3,200. I think that makes sense. I'm fine with those exposures. No real issues with anything I'm getting here. Kickers, I'm getting to, well, this is different. This is way different than what we were getting to earlier. 23.7% flex, Chris Boswell, 1% captain. I'm getting to 24%. Looks great. I'll take that. Evan McPherson is 5,000, project for 8.7% flex, 0.1% captain. If you use those projected ownership numbers, I'm getting to 43.4% at flex. I'm going to bring that number down. Maybe I'll increase the projected ownership a little bit there, but I don't think I need over 40% of Evan McPherson. All right, so that does it as far as the player breakdowns. Now I need to, I'm going to actually refresh this just to make sure, just in case there were any kind of changes here since the last time I ran it, which was right before the show started. Reset all. Use settings, 15,000 lineups, top heavy, shady portfolio, 219. Now, maybe I will make some changes to the inputs this time. Normally, I don't make any changes to the inputs until I see what it gives, but I think it gave me a good enough idea. Higgins, I guess Higgins at 21.1%. I think it was 20 earlier. So maybe there have been changes. So let me just see what this gives me without changing anything first. Steelers defense, your captain for single entry. Okay. I mean, I think Higgins is a fairly sneaky captain. Narrative fake on Fantastic. It would make the best winning screenshot. Interesting. Fantastic has been at like the last 3 live finals I've been at. Playing kicker captain. Also think about leaving money on the table as most will. Yeah, it's true. If you play a cheap option at captain, you do often end up with similar builds to a lot of other people. Yeah, I'm trying to think who else would be my strong captain options that are sneaky. Obviously, the quarterbacks are getting ownership. Chase, I mean, Higgins is getting 5%. So if that's too high, maybe Gainwell is getting less. Gainwell, kind of interesting. P. Ryan. Warren Captain is not super chalky, but I think he's like 8% or something. Well, I'll look at it. I wouldn't say you need Jamar. Like I'm going to have a lot of Jamar, but like if you're playing one lineup and you want to fade Jamar, I think that's viable. Okay, yeah. If 5% is sneaky, then yeah, Higgins is my favorite sneaky captain. NLCS pitching duel in progress. I'll look forward to that next year when it's Justin Steele pitching in the NLCS. All right, diversifying payouts. Yeah, I'm going to get away from some of the Chase Brown. I'm not buying it. The workload doesn't seem good enough to justify him. Is Darnell Washington too cute to captain? I don't think it's too cute. I think like Darnell Washington gets four catches, scores a touchdown, scores 16 fantasy points, and allows you to get all of Chase, Higgins, Rogers, DK. Like, I actually don't know if that would work. But no, I don't think it's too cute. I mean, like, I'm not saying that I want none of Chase Brown or Chase Brown at captain. I just like he's not the one that I see, and I'm like, I need to prioritize that. Yeah, I mean that is how it works. You talk bad about a player like Brown, and it's like, yeah, he'll have 16 yards and 2 touchdowns. They did say coming into the year that he's going to be a household name. People are going to know Chase Brown by the end of the season. So maybe this is the year, this is the game they make it happen. All right, got the lineups. I'm going to before I do anything else, I just need to get these lineups in because currently I have 219 reserved entries. Want to make sure that I actually have entries in there. So before I make any adjustments, just going to download these, get them in on DraftKings, and then I'll make adjustments. Okay. So let me get these in. All right, so I've at least got lineups in now. All right, and now let's see what I have now, and I'll make some changes. So top lineup right now is Jamar Chase at captain, has Joe Flacco, Noah Fant, and Evan McPherson. On the other side is Chris Boswell and Jalen Warren. Second lineup is Aaron Rodgers captain. As you can see, when I have Aaron Rodgers as captain, this is what I want it to look like. Has mega stack with Darnell Washington, DK Metcalf, and both of the Steelers running backs. That's kind of fun. Chase Brown on the other side uses almost the full salary cap. Third lineup is Jalen Warren at captain with Kenneth Gainwell. Steelers defense, love that triple. Chase Brown, Evan McPherson, and Jamar Chase in that one. So we are getting pretty diversified here. Again, I'm using the shady portfolio diversifier. So these are not just in order of EV. It's kind of scrambling things up. So my lineup portfolio is not going to cannibalize each other. I'm going to get a portfolio that has the highest EV together instead of just the highest EV lineups. Very sophisticated thing that Shady Advice has going on there. I couldn't tell you how it works, but it works well. In terms of player exposures. All right. So again, this looks same as it was before. Just looking real quick to see if anything has changed big time. Still not getting much Higgins. Not a ton of the tertiary Steelers. Getting to a lot of Jalen Warren. More Chase Brown than I think I need. A lot of Kenneth Gainwell. I didn't remember getting this much last time. Maybe I was. Not a ton of Samaje Perine. I am getting a little bit of Caleb Johnson now. Okay. Tight end, getting to 22% Jonnu, only 11% Darnell Washington, 18% Noah Fant, 11% Freiermuth, 1% sample, 1% Grandy. I think, again, I want more sample there. Defense is getting to a ton of the Steelers, a little bit less of the Bengals. Good with all that. Kickers, 42% McPherson, 27% Boswell. Going to get rid of some of that exposure. All right, so I'm going to go back to the inputs now, make some changes real quick. So getting to a good amount of Rodgers, Warren, Gainwell, love all of that. Getting to a little bit of Caleb Johnson, that seems fine. DK Metcalf, I think I was getting to a fair amount. Let me just double check my DK Metcalf again now. Yep, 20, 24, and 12%. That looks good. I think I wanted a little bit more of some of these tertiary receivers on the Steelers. So I think what I'm going to do, what do I want to do here? I think I might just get rid of Connor Hayward. Nah. Maybe I'll get rid of Connor Hayward and Keyshawn Williams. I think I have to make sacrifice somewhere. So I'm going to click Smart Adjust, bring Keyshawn Williams down to 0, Connor Hayward down to 0. Give that to Skowronek and Roman Wilson. Do I want to do anything to the ownership projections? I'm going to bring down Caleb just slightly. And Washington, maybe. I don't know if maybe he really will be this popular. Yeah, let's try that. Okay. And then I was getting to a fair amount of Boswell. I'm just going to bring his projection down to 9. On the Bengals side, I was getting to way more Chase Brown than I think I need. So I'm going to bring the rush rate down. It's interesting because he's actually projected for a fair amount of ownership. So this is one of those spots where it's like, should I just trust the Sims? Just like if they're saying he's good, even at 48% ownership, or I guess 42% ownership. But I'm going to get my guys. I'm going to move the rush rate down to 36%. Which should get me to more of the pass catchers. Also, Samaje Perine is just at 23. I'm going to move Chase Brown down to 60% rushing market share. Samaje Perine up to 26%. Oh, and I did not smart adjust that. I'm going to adjust it slightly more to 58 and 28. Okay, there. Taj Brooks. And then T. Higgins, I want to give a little bit more of the workload. So I'm just going to take it directly from, and these are famous last words, going to take it from Mitchell Tinsley. Give that directly to T. Higgins. I also really like Drew Sample. I think I can take away some of Chase Brown's receiving market share because I'm getting so much. Just going to move him down to 9%. And give a bit of that to Drew Sample. And maybe Noah Fant. All right. And then I'm going to move Evan McPherson's projection down to, I don't know if I can do, I think I have to do whole numbers, so I'm going to try. All right, that worked. Okay. Move down the projection there slightly. All right. Now I'm just going to try running again. Oh, and I think I can change to just 10,000 lineups now. Okay. Boom. Get rid of the bots. All right. Sample some Scotty doesn't know lineups for all the dough. Does that mean Drew Sample with Scotty Miller? Is that what we're saying? Okay, this is a good note from Brandon. Brandon says Fowler says Steelers hope to get Roman Wilson involved Thursday. The last time Brandon gave us some breaking news like this, it was who was it? The guy who played special teams on the Eagles, and then they randomly were lighting him up. So like during the stream, I went from like, I don't like this guy, I'm not going to play him, to this is a priority. We should play a lot of this Eagles receiver, the special teamer guy. I forget who it was now. Yeah, Britton Covey. We got that breaking news from Brandon. Changed my whole opinion of the player, and had multiple people win six figures that night. After getting everybody got in on Britton Covey. Love that. So, maybe we need to factor in getting a bit more Roman Wilson tonight. I don't think this is the same situation, to be clear. This is just this isn't like, hey, this guy was just special teams, to he's a starting receiver now. Brian says you don't need to redo the whole sim now. You can just click the resim contest button. Okay. Nice. Because I've got my field of lineups, you're saying? All right. Good to know. Thanks, Brian. So this isn't the same situation where it's like this guy was only a special teamer and now he's a starting receiver. This is like, okay, a guy who was already running some routes, they want to get him more involved. But I do think like that, I like hearing that. That does make me think, okay, let's prioritize getting a little bit at least. So get yourself, maybe 10% Roman Wilson if the field's not going to react. Yeah, keyword is hope. Yeah, exactly. Oh no, Pepper Tony. Decisions are being made. Let's make it some of Washington at least. Yeah. Get rid of some Washington. Yeah. 12% Roman. That seems fair. Is a good note for how Run the Sims work. So after I made those changes, I reran the whole sim. So it's recreating all the lineups and stuff. Could have skipped a step by just clicking the resim the contest button because I already had all the lineups created. Calculating payouts. I think we're getting close here. So with that note in mind, I might be able to do one more set if I don't like these lineups. It'll be close. Depends on how quick I am. If the Steelers plan to trade Pat Freiermuth tonight, will be the night to showcase his talents. He only has 8 receptions all year. Is that right? 8 receptions? That's insane. All right, we are almost done with this set. Reminder, you can use promo code Neil if you want to check out Run the Sims. 10% off any of their products. I'm also playing over 47.5 receiving yards for T. Higgins on pick 6. So just going all in on T. Higgins tonight. Hopefully he actually breaks out. All right. Going to download these. Oh, got even fewer lineups this time, I think. All right. Get these in. Good. All right, what are we seeing here? Top Mar Chase captain with Yoshivas, Evan McPherson, Jalen Warren, Joe Flacco, Kenneth Gainwell. I'm going to skip right to player exposures because I need to be quick here. So quarterbacks, damn, that's a lot of Joe Flacco and not a lot of Aaron Rodgers. I don't know what I did to get to so much Joe Flacco. I guess maybe did I increase the pass rate and that got to way too much Joe Flacco. So I'm going to try to change that real quick. A little bit more getting a lot more T. Higgins than I was before. Not as much DK Metcalf, which scares me a little bit. So maybe I change things too much. I'm going to increase Roman Wilson's market share a little bit. Maybe he's the best bet of the tertiary options there. I did get rid of a lot of my Chase Brown. I clearly changed things a bit too much there. Warren Gainwell look good. P. Ryan looks good. All right. Tight ends. Yeah, getting 8% Drew sample now like that. A little bit better. Okay. Everything looks fine there. Defenses look fine. Kickers. Still getting to a ton of Evan McPherson, so I can change that a little bit more. All right, I'm going to try this one more time. So I got to a little bit less DK Metcalf. I'm going to prioritize Roman Wilson a little bit more. So again, going to make sure Smart Adjust is on. Roman Wilson. Going to move up to 6% market share. Is there anybody I can get rid of here? Not really. 5% market share. And then normalize. Who can I get rid of? Maybe move it away from Skowronek or Caleb Johnson. I'm going to get rid of. No, I don't want to get rid of Rodgers rushing market share. All right, I'm going to get rid of Caleb Johnson receiving. No. I'm at a loss for what I want to do here. I guess I'll take it away from Skowronek. That scares me a little bit because I'm not going to get any Skowronek now. Okay, and then on the Steelers side, I'm going to bring the rush rate back up to 37%. I wasn't getting any Rodgers this time. I was getting a ton of Joe Flacco. I think I can take down Joe Flacco's rushing market share and give that to Chase Brown, Samaje Perine. Going to bring Chase Brown back up to 60%. Samaje Perine, 30%. Tosh Brooks, 6%. Still wasn't getting to a ton of Drew Sample. Wouldn't mind getting a bit more there. So I'm going to bring him up to 8%. And we're going to bring McPherson down to 7. Click normalize. All right, that's. All right, we'll see if this works. Now I'm going to go SimRunner Pro, rerun contest, include lineups. All right, we'll see. Okay. Switched out Roman for mostly Tinsley. That's scary. Brandon thinks Yoshivas gets a touchdown tonight. All right, we got a lot of bots. They did catch up eventually. Agree with this. Aaron says this exercise feels like p hacking to get what you want, not what the distribution of outcomes could be. That is a lot of what I do is not the proper way to use sims. To be honest, some of it is like there are times when I'm like, I actually think this guy is going to have more usage than what the sims are saying. But yes, there are aspects of it where I'm like, all right, I'm taking away Joe Flacco's rushing market share because I want less Joe Flacco. This is not the best use of the sims. Yeah, and I've talked about this with Adam a fair amount. Like I think it's my optimizer brain where I'm still just trying to get it to give me what I want rather than just entirely letting it do its thing. It still I think has value because it's still going to be giving me the proper correlations, and then of course the using the shady portfolio optimizer, I'm still getting a better portfolio of lineups. But yeah, this is not the best use of the sims. What's your Scotty Miller ownership? It was not a ton. I'm not sure if I'm going to be getting this run of the Sims in, but we'll see. Got a minute, probably a little over a minute left. Just watching the this up here is telling me if it's done. could have tried just using the filters instead. I can't scroll to see more lineups. Sorry, Brandon, because I need or Anthony, because I need to be able to see this up here. I don't think I'm going to get this run in. Looking unlikely at this point. We got greedy. So I guess I'm just cheering against Chase Brown, cheering for T. Higgins in a big way. That's where we're at right now. Would have liked to have gotten to more Roman Wilson with the latest gossip, but it is what it is. I don't know that we want to read too much into that anyway. All right, looks like we are at lock. So this one not getting in. We're gonna be using the latest. All right. Appreciate all of you for watching. Again, I'll be back. Please do like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already done so. I will be making a video on how I'm using Run the Sims for the main slate, as I do every weekend. This is giving me anxiety for you. I mean, I don't have a ton of money on the line, so it is what it is. I'll be doing the main slate breakdown using the Sims. Of course, I'll be back on Sunday Night Football to run them again. If you want to hang out, talk with people. In the meantime, you can check out the Flaniverse Discord. There's a link in the description of this video, free to join if you want to check it out. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you hanging out with me here, and I will see you on the next one.